All people deserve equitable access to capital, but that's not always available. Often, people of color struggle to access the capital and the resources they need to grow and scale their businesses. In many communities of color, friends and family don't always have the disposable income to fund projects, even though those projects could be groundbreaking to the community. It is imperative that there are flexible loan and grant products so that communities of color can start and grow the businesses that many have long dreamed of. Now, we cannot access what we do not know exists. That's why I'm so happy to be having a conversation today with the founding CEO of Rochdale Capital, John Holdsclaw IV, and also the founder of the Revolve Fund, James Wahls. Now, just so you know, Spotlight PR has started this spotlighting series, and in this series, we introduce and highlight and really spotlight the work of some of the amazing clients, partners, and allies who we've met over the past several years. As part of this conversation, we not only want to highlight leaders who are doing incredible work, but we want to tell you about the products that they offer that can be a benefit to the community. I'll tell you a little bit about John and James. I'll read their bio, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. So John Holdsclaw currently serves as president and CEO of Rochdale Capital. It's a newly formed national nonprofit community development loan fund that will provide financing and also technical assistance to cooperative enterprises and other community-based initiatives. Rochdale Capital focuses on making financial services available to under-resourced communities, specifically to women and/or minority-owned small and growing businesses. Now, James Wahls is a lawyer who brings more than 15 years experience in the philanthropic, impact investing, and also legal sectors. With stints at the Annie E. Casey Foundation in Baltimore, Maryland, and the W.K. Kellogg Foundation in Battle Creek, Michigan, Wahls has managed or co-managed more than $240 million in impact investing allocations comprised of grants, equity, debt, and direct investments. So I'm looking forward to chatting. I hope that you will listen to this conversation and take note because I know that it's going to be impactful for your life. John, can you tell us a little bit about why you founded Rochdale Capital?
It's a great scene in my years in the CDFI movement, working for Capital Impact Partners. And then I switched over from there and left the policy realm and went into the business development realm, working for the National Cooperative Bank, which many people may know has this uncommon mandate that 35% of all of their disbursements, they must make best efforts that they be in under-resourced communities. And so as time went on, it became harder and harder for me to get my deals done in a regulated environment. And so I went to the then CEO and basically said to him, look, if I can't get my deals done, why am I here? And he said, let's create our own thing. And so that idea of a mission lending entity became what is now Rochdale Capital, an emerging national nonprofit community development loan fund.
Talk to me about the significance of the name. I know that there is history behind the name, but can you tell us a little bit about that history?
Sure can. So Rochdale Society in 1844 were the original group of people who came up with the 7 cooperative principles. And so at our core, we are a cooperative-based or cooperatively founded organization. But what was so fascinating was during 1845 to 1847, Frederick Douglass, after he wrote his first autobiography, had escaped from America as a wanted man and then went to the UK and spent some time. And while there's no direct evidence to show that he interacted with a lot of the members of the society, one of the society's brothers was a member of parliament and ended up being one of his better friends over the course of time. So much so that when his 2 years were up there, he gave him more than half the money that he needed to come back to America and buy his freedom. So he left the U.S., came to the UK, a wanted man, but he came back a free man. And our former bank CEO was so captivated by that story that I wanted to make sure that Rochdale was a part of the name. Rochdale Capital. It was either going to be that or the transatlantic steamer that he came over called the Cambria. So our marketing and SVP shot the Cambria down really fast. But I just love that history. I really do, as it relates to the name of the organization.
How does that history inspire your day-to-day work? Like when you're doing your work and you're carrying this tremendous legacy, how does that impact you?
It impacts me because, at his core, not only was Douglas a statesperson, not only was he an abolitionist, but he was also, I guess what we would call these days a disruptor. Obviously, Rochdale society, with the creation of the principles which still live on to this day, were disruptors as well, because they were looking at a different way or a different model of ownership. And so, people ask me often, what does the world need with another CDFI? And I often tell them it's not exactly what we'll do that other CDFIs will do, is what we won't do. And so, I really want Rochdale, and our team wants Rochdale to be a little different. And I think the loans that we've done, I think that our mission, and I think that the way that we go about living our brand makes us different in that way.
For people who don't know, what's the connection between Rochdale and the Revolve Fund?
Well, the Revolve Fund was actually the very first philanthropic entity to provide us with funds, with a recoverable grant. And I will forever be grateful. Again, it gave us credibility that we didn't have before, and enabled us to raise additional funds. I mean, listen, we're not going to take for granted that we're, or be naive enough to think that we're a typical emerging CDFI, but at the same time, we're not certified. We don't have audited finances, and the Revolve Fund had enough faith and support of us as being an unapologetically Black-led CDFI that it gave us that recoverable grant, which I feel strongly gave a nudge to a few others to give us a PRI and a grant as well. So very grateful to the Revolve Fund for laying that foundation for us. And so as we go into next year and hopefully become certified, as well as we get our first audited finances, we'll say proudly that the Revolve Fund put faith in Rochdale Capital early on and was an early grantee.
And James, I'll bring you into the conversation. So what does it mean for you, when you're doing your work, what does it mean for you to invest in an entity like Rochdale Capital?
So for me, while I was investing in Rochdale, I was also investing in the leader in the space. So John has been a leader in the impact investing and co-op space for a number of years. When I first got into impact investing, John was one of the first people I got to meet in the space and been just so proud of all the work that he's done. But also, as we think about shared ownership and we think about wealth creation and we think about cooperative principles, these are critical, right? And these are strategies that, surprisingly are not funded that well in the impact investment space. And so to see an emerging strategy like Rochdale, to see it being led by John, it was a no-brainer for us to provide support to the strategy, with the back of NCB and the pipeline. Talking to John about the pipeline and some of the things that he was investing in, including my hometown, Detroit. I will say it. It was easy for us to support the mission, support the values, and support the leader.
So for both of you, and it doesn't matter to me who goes first, but can you talk a little bit about your why you do this work? Of all the things that you could involve yourself in, like, why is this work important?
But I'll go first if it's okay, James. I mean, I'm from a small town in North Carolina called Statesville. Grew up in a part of town. There were two parts of town for the Black community. There was Rabbit Town, there was Rankin Town. I grew up in Rankin Town. And, proud Head Start child, latchkey kid, parents divorced when I was 11. So statistically, I shouldn't even be having this conversation with you all right now. And so I think at the end of the day, while my career started in government relations, I really wanted to do something that was always going to help people, because I know how important, I tell people all the time that I had my little pink or yellow reduced or free lunch ticket every day for lunch. I had, we went to the summer program in the summertime, and they walk us over to the high school and give us our bologna sandwich, our apple, and our milk and chips. And so, again, the communities that I serve, I'm from those communities. I'm a product of that community. And so I think at the end of the day, that's my why, because I'm one of those kids that still remembers growing up in Rankintown. And also, too, for that reason, I come into work every day with that same chip on my shoulder, because I never had a John, but I want to be a John, and Rochdale wants to be an organization for the same type of communities that I grew up in.
So I will fully admit I should have gone first to follow up after that. And I'm like, great. But in all honesty, for me, I have the opportunity, I have the privilege to support strategies like this one. And so if I have that opportunity, I'm going to do so. I've been fortunate enough to work in impact investing for a number of years, as you already mentioned, Jennifer. I've been fortunate enough to get exposed to a lot of different investment strategies and different investment approaches and philanthropic approaches, and I've had opportunity to use all of those tools and skill sets that I was blessed with by being in these positions, and be able to support my community and support strategies like John's and others. And so for me, it almost feels like it's almost an obligation to do so, because I have that opportunity to do.
So for people who may be listening and perhaps they're toying with launching a business, but maybe there's some fear, how do I find the right people who will be willing to take a chance and invest? Where do you recommend people start broadly, when they have a business idea? So broadly, where should they start? And then specifically, what types of projects are you all interested in funding or partnering with?
So you give me the hard question, John. Okay, I got this one. So when I was coming up, and I was a social entrepreneur before I got into impact investing and philanthropy, there were maybe a third of the resources available for you to understand markets, understand business, understand investment tools are out there. So the first thing I would encourage folks to do is just Google or whatever search engine you use and start searching. There are a number of public and private sources where you can glean a lot of information, whether it's impact investing, small business, or if it's your industry, a lot of commentary, business commentary that was just unavailable when I was doing strategy. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is get an understanding of what type of capital you're really looking for, right? As you will learn as you're kind of navigating this space, there are all different types of capital form and needs. And the number one thing I would tell folks who are trying to come into a space or start a business is truly understand what type of capital that you're gonna need to start your business, and avoid capital if you can avoid capital as you're starting your business. And the reason why I say that, because too often when people are starting a business, the number one goal is to try to secure capital, and then the number one goal is to learn your market and learn your business. And that is probably like the key thing. So when you're like looking for folks to talk to, while I used to be searching for great folks like John from Rochdale, you should also be looking for folks within business that you can just talk to and understand and learn. Because many of the pitfalls that you're going to experience, they've already experienced and continue to experience in some ways. And so I think that's like the number one thing I would think about is find people within your markets, in your industry that you're interested in, and learn from those folks as much as you possibly can. Now I'll turn over to John, who actually does the underwriting and actually funds businesses. So John, tell me.
Well, look, I'm not going to be very far from you. I mean, listen, there are so many, like you said, free tools now on the SBA, National Cooperative Bank will send people to their EverFi section in regards to building strategic plans and whatnot. Business plans, but also too, it's already baked in the cake that CDFIs already do provide development services to their prospective borrowers. I mean, that's what a lot of times we have to teach people how to borrow from us. But one of the things that I'll say is that, in a lot of the communities that we also serve, there's a lot of trauma, and there's a lot of trauma based upon past financial experiences. And I'll give you an example right now, and I won't say any names, but I've got a great project in the Midwest where majority Black female a project, and I can't get the financials yet. And listen, we all have a great sense of pride, and they're very prideful about the presentation of the finances. And I'm saying to them, look, this is a no judgment zone. I don't care what you have. If it's on the back of a napkin, don't ask me my FICO score, So I'm trying to get them comfortable in a lot of ways. But again, this is the trauma that people deal with in a lot of times. And so I think the only add on to what James said is that finding those people that you can trust, finding those people who you can, I always tell people the worst question is the one that you don't ask. And so again, putting it out there and giving them an opportunity to ask those questions. But again, there's like James said, there's so many resources on the web now that can at least give you a strong foundation for your business. And then lastly, I would say, and I, one of the things that I carry in my portfolio is I have a council on foundations glossary, and, for someone like James, who's and I'm gonna give him his props here, one of the greater minds in the impact investing space, he's forgotten more about these words than I ever know. But I, need to continue to bone up on asset class and all these other things that when I get into these rooms where people are speaking in this language, I have to be able to understand. But also, too, when I talk to our prospective borrowers, I have to put that information into a language that they can completely understand. And so, again, it's always a dance between where I need to go to get my own capital and where I need to go to deploy the capital that I get, and how I have to meet people where they are, as opposed to assuming that they understand what capital stack means. So.
Thank you for that. Yes, James.
Okay. Sorry, Jennifer. I just wanted to acknowledge the importance of the knowledge transfer that John is talking about right there. So, for those who are listening, who are in these spaces and have opportunity to work both within the community and within financial sectors and markets, it's truly important and imperative for those folks to think about that knowledge transfer of understanding all of the terms and the glossary, but be able to relate into practical terms, because oftentimes those terms in the glossary are not practical, and you have to be able to apply them to real life situations. So, but the onus falls on the investor to do that in this space.
So I want to go back to something that you said, John, and it's a topic that I broached with you, James, and that is around there is a lot of trauma when it comes to finances in the Black community, and I suspect other communities of color. Do you think that shame holds people back from applying for funding or for considering the different types of funding tools that could be available?
That would be a yes in all caps. It does. It does play. I was at a financial inclusion thing a couple of weeks ago for another organization, and they just talked about the amount of money that was generated at check cashing places after a lot of these federal government checks went out and during COVID. Billions and billions of dollars in these fees. And so there's always going to be this, only thing that I would add to shame would be this level of distrust, to where, grandma keeps her money in her mattress. She doesn't necessarily trust going to a bank. So you deal with the unbanked and the underbanked. And so if there's shame of anything, there's this shame of not knowing how a process is going to go. I always tell this story. I bought my wife a new car several years ago, one she'd always wanted. And I'm sitting there in the dealership and I got a $42,000 check in my hand. I know how my credit score was, but I'm dripping in sweat, because until that salesperson put that key in my hand, the deal was not complete. And so where does that come from? Is that, that's generational trauma. That's all kind of things that, Black and brown people have gone through over the course of time. I should have walked in there and been cool as a cucumber, but I was not. And so I often think about that story when I think about the communities and the prospective borrowers that we work with on a regular basis. So I would definitely say shame, pride, and fear are all parts of what our communities experience on a daily basis.
And I will also just add resistance, like a complete resistance to some of the for lack of better, foolishness that we have to go through when we navigate these financial systems. And so if folks can figure out a way or try to figure out a way where they don't have to deal with like these unfair principles, like overburdening restrictions and regulations, then we're going to do it. People are going to do it. And so I also think that in many instances when John or I are stepping into a room, you're walking into a room of resistance. And like, we're not going to do this anymore. Like, we're not going to deal with the financial rejection that can come from banks, and we're not going to deal with the lack of capital or the marginal amount of capital so you can meet your quota that you're going to give me, but it's not enough for me to actually move and grow my business. Like, we're not dealing with that. And so it's, again, the burden falls upon John, myself, and others to say, like, we understand that, we recognize that, we understand the historical legacy of discrimination and economic oppression that's happened by these financial systems. And we still are going to sit here and talk to you about why we think we offer a product that's good for you and your business. Or we'll tell you it's not good for your business, because we're going to be trustworthy and honest about it and tell you you should find some alternative approaches as you look to grow your business or nonprofit.
So we're going to wrap up, but on that last point, in terms of just like fear, I remember when I bought my last house, and it was you take your down payment in, and you work so hard to save a down payment. I was on pins and needles because I was thinking anything could go wrong. They could, one bank could tell me they didn't get it, and then all this money has left my account, and then what's going to happen? Then I'm not going to have a home. So I was literally having a panic attack when I was I think this was before the closing, because I had to go to the bank and wire the money. And it was just so frightening. And I was thinking about all the things that could be wrong. So, I appreciate you all speaking to this. I'm sure that there are people who are listening, and they may say, well, how would I follow up to find out if I'm even a good candidate or to speak? How can people reach you all?
I'll speak for Rochdale first. Obviously people can go to rochdalecapital.org, ROCHDALE capital.org. We have a HubSpot contact deal there. You'd be surprised how many we get of those a week, which is a great start. Or if they'll ping me on LinkedIn or something like that. And so, again, that probably would be the best way to go about finding about Rochdale.
And for Revolve, revolvefund.org, and all the information is on the website.
And before we wrap, is there anything that you want to lift up for listeners that you think is important to share in this conversation?
I would say this, and I just feel like we're in this moment right now. I spoke on the shared ownership at the New York Fed 6 months ago. I went to a Ford and Rockefeller deal a couple of months ago in regards to shared ownership, as well as I was at the Fed back again talking about shared ownership. The point I'm trying to make is that, this can be a moment or this can be a movement. Let's real talk. The racial wealth gap will never be closed in this country. There's no way unless there's some serious policy intervention. But what I think people are starting to realize now is that the closest that they can get to that, or the closest that they can get in regards to wealth building and our assets, are some form of ownership. And that's why at Rochdale, we We continuously say that ownership is the foundation to vibrant communities. And so all that I would do in regards to folks that are listening to this is, like James said, encourage us to do that knowledge sharing, encourage us to think about our networks. You know, our network, it basically is our net worth and whatnot. And so, you know, like my mom always told me, you got to hustle, and because nobody's going to give you anything in this world. So that's what I would leave with the audience if given the opportunity. So thank you, Jennifer.
So one of the things that always comes to mind when I think about entrepreneurial journeys, one, they're actually a few things. One, they're extremely hard, right? And whether they're on the for-profit side or on the nonprofit side, they're extremely hard. The percentages say that more than likely you're going to fail at whatever journey you take. And what I always hope for is that, you know, for people of color, Black and brown folks in particular, that they get to fail and try again. And until we get to that point where we can fail and try again, it's an ongoing, continuous work and struggle.
You know, but I think how we think about failure is so critical, because a lot of times when you say, as soon as you said failure, I tensed up, you know, and I tensed up because I think that there's a lot just in society says that if you fail, it is over, you know, but that's not the case. So thank you for sharing that. And I don't know if there's any reaction to what I just shared.
My own reaction is, when we fail, it's a failure. When others fail, sometimes it's a learning experience. It should be learning experiences for us as well.